we got to touch on something, man. And and I know our audience are gonna want to know this. I want to unpack this with you. You make the decision to leave college early and go to the league. Kind of walk us through that process. Like, were you hearing that you was going to be a first rounder?
Yeah. I mean, pretty much. I mean, that's what the topic was. I'd actually hadn't even really entertained the thought, really, until the time came. And so I wound up getting a call from Coach, and he wanted me to come down to the gym and, sit down and talk with him a little bit. So we sat down, and he got on the phone. He made some phone calls to a few. That's back when Isaiah, I think, was getting ready to be the head coach / GM of Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had Rod Thorne, who was the newly VP / basketball operations guy with the Nets when Willis Reed was the general manager at the time. And then there were several other people that he got on the phone with, and, all of them, I think it was Sacramento Kings and some other teams, and they were all saying the same thing. And so I went there thinking I was going to get a completely different lecture than what I actually got.
Mm-hmm.
And it wound up being a situation where he was like, hey, man, you've done all you can do here. And so I heard that, what am I supposed to think? And, I'm thinking, well, okay. So I never forget, I go back and I tell my mom, I'm like, hey, Coach said it's time. And she's like, time for what? And I'm like, time to put my name in the draft. So wound up doing it. And then, as you well know, a lot of the work, that's when it really starts. You don't know that when you're 19, but that's when the agents are behind the scenes, making the phone calls. That's when the relationships are being formed. And I never forget David Falk, who was at the time representing Jordan and Alonzo. He had everybody.
Yeah.
He came and sat down with me in Baton Rouge and was like, hey, if you sign with me, you're going to get picked here. I'm thinking myself, though, why do I need you if I've already done the work? And so I wound up picking another agency. And lo and behold, that other agency was not one of the people of the in crowd at the time. Didn't really have a name, didn't really have the relationships. And so
Wow.
I think the rest was kind of history, and that's when I really started to understand how much of a business it was.
Education on the fly.
Yep.
I mean, and I just got to ask this, man.
Damn.
Because again, you're one of the top players in the country.
Yeah.
You won an NCAA championship. I mean, you hit one of the toughest, biggest shots you can hit in a game.
All right.
When you didn't hear your name called that night, what were your thoughts?
Oh man, it was so crazy because I watched, I think, the first 13 picks. I watched Portis fall. You remember he fell from top 5 to 13. So I watched him fall, and at the time I'm thinking, man, how he fall to 13? And so I'd never forget. That's back when I had I had a Benzo. That's when everybody was getting their whips and stuff before you ever even signed a contract, which is the dumbest thing ever now. But you live and learn.
Yep.
And so I jumped in my Benzo and I drove over to my park over in my neighborhood. Dropped the top, got the music playing. I'm out there just shooting. Like, man, they'll call me. When they call my mom, she'll hit me on the phone, and then I'll go home and we'll celebrate because all my friends and family were there. And so one of my boys pulled up on me. He was like, man, they're at 25. They ain't called you yet. And I'm like, what? I'm like, well, maybe they'll call me at 29. Now, keep in mind, I had some assurances from some teams that I'm not going to even put them out there like that.
Right.
That I was going to be picked at a certain spot. But, that didn't happen. So, at 20 years old, it was devastating, to be honest. It really changed my whole outlook on not just sports, but just media, business, and how people can tell you things with a straight face and not really mean them. And so, I learned a lot. I think I went into somewhat of a slight depression, probably from 20 to probably, almost 21, to be honest, because I had a lot of things happen. I lost my mother, didn't get drafted. And, I think I was probably one of the first mental health cases that didn't get diagnosed. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But fortunate for me, I always held my hat on the backbone of education because that's what my parents had always preached to me. So for me, it was kind of like, okay, they don't believe I can hoop. Well, I'm going to show them. Well, I wound up going to Jersey as a free agent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's back when they had Derek Coleman, Kenny Anderson, Rex Walters. That was that squad. And had a make good contract. I think back then it was like for $250. In my eyes, I'm thinking all I got to do is make it. It ain't even about the money no more. It's just about making it, showing these dudes I can make it.
And I
so
belong.
I go in there, man. And I outplay all those dudes. They told me I had to shoot 50% from the field or from the three to make the team, which I mean, no nobody shooting that but probably Kerr and Tim Legler back in
And
those
Petrovic.
days. Yeah, and Petrovic. And I wound up, man, shooting like 51 or something like that. Now, obviously, it was on limited shots. But every game I got in, I played well. I'll never forget Butch Beard came and told me, he said, you made the team, man, but the owners decided to go a different direction. And so after that, I started going to Europe. And every time I had the opportunity to come back and try for a team, it was kind of like, I already got a deal over here where they love me at. Why am I going to come to your camp and spend my whole summer being I'm away from my family for 8 months already. I'm not going to spend my 3 months being away from them too, chasing a dream when I already figured out, you know, y'all ain't in love with me like that, so I'm going to capitalize over here where they do love me.
Did you still use representation for overseas jobs? Or you just did the deals on your own?
I had one agent my first job. And after that, I just developed the relationships on my own. And I wound up on my own having, you know, doing my contracts. And
See that?
so
Yeah.
I was really lucky to be one of the first dudes to do that because I didn't have to worry about somebody speaking on my behalf. And, you know, overseas can be sometimes they might want to get a little crazy with the money they don't want to pay. Well, there wasn't no middleman. So it's like, I'm out here producing. I show up. It's time to get paid. You don't want to pay me. Well, guess what? I'm either not going to play or I'm going to get on this bird and head back to the house. And so I always had leverage. And so I've always been fortunate to play well enough and was blessed enough to be on some good teams that were financially stable.
Yep.
And so, man, I just stayed over there.
Let me ask you this, man. So after you have this initial conversation with Coach Richardson, he says, go to the league.